We live in interesting times for the headlines. An official said the Department of Education is now ready for the May 13 midterm elections. North Korea welcomes a U.S. envoy's visit to Seoul by firing projectiles for the second time in just 6 days, according to the South's military, as Pyongyang seeks to up the ante in deadlocked nuclear negotiations with Washington. And the Russia probe plunges into turmoil as Donald Trump's son reportedly is ordered to testify before a Senate panel, and the White House refuses to release material on investigations into the president. And South Africa's ANC was leading according to early official results on Thursday, following the first electoral test of whether President Cyril Ramaphosa has reinvigorated support for the ruling party, while voters are clamoring for change. Our EBC correspondent Priscilla Chulu will give us an update. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. And now to the news. The Department of Education, or DepEd, is now ready for the May 13 midterm elections, according to an official. DepEd Undersecretary Annalyn Sevilla said, quote, "We have already conducted a series of cluster conferences on the DepEd Election Task Force, or ETF, in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Teachers and non-teaching personnel with poll duties would be provided adequate information and technical legal assistance through the ETF," she added. Apart from the ETF and training of teachers and non-teaching personnel with poll duties, Sevilla said the DepEd has also started the preparation of 36,830 schools which will be used as poll precincts nationwide. Citing the provisions of Republic Act 10756, or Election Service Reform Act, Sevilla said the 531,307 officials, teachers, and non-teaching personnel would be provided honoraria, travel allowance, and other benefits.
Handang-handa na po tayo. Lahat po ng preparasyon na dapat gawin ay ginawa na po natin. Ang ating mga silid-aralan ay handang-handa na po. Makakaasa po kayo na magiging maayos ang eleksyon sa Lunes. Humigit kumulang nasa 240 to 250,000 po yung mga kaguruan na nating magsisilbi bilang miyembro ng election board. Dapat mangyari yung kalahati po ng mga halagang ibibigay sa umaga pa lamang bago po nila kuhain yung kanilang mga election paraphernalia. Yung balanse dapat ibigay kapag isusoli na sa hapon sa Kapitolyo, sa City Hall, sa munisipyo, pag binigay na po sa canvassing board, yung mga paraphernalia na kinuha nila sa umaga. Kung hindi po ito nangyari through the COMELEC election officers, ang sabi po ng batas, within 15 days, dapat matanggap po na nila yung balanse ng mga halaga.
To other news now, North Korea welcomed a U.S. envoy's visit to Seoul by firing at least one projectile for the second time in a week Thursday. This is according to the South's military, as Pyongyang seeks to up the ante in deadlocked nuclear negotiations with Washington. Now, the launch came after North Korea carried out a military drill and fired multiple projectiles on Saturday, with at least one believed to be a short-range missile. It was also hours after the U.S. Special Representative on North Korea, Stephen Biegun, arrived in Seoul late Wednesday for talks with South Korean officials on the allies' approach towards Pyongyang. It is Biegun's first visit to Seoul since the Hanoi summit between U.S. President Trump and North's leader Kim Jong-un collapsed without agreement on rolling back Pyongyang's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. We are still analyzing whether it is a single or multiple projectiles, Joint Chiefs of Staff spokesman Kim Jun-rak said, adding the launch fired in an eastward direction appeared to originate from Sinurai in North Pyongyang province. The decades-old Sinurai operational missile base, 75 kilometers northwest of Pyongyang, is one of North Korea's longest-running missile facilities. It houses a regiment-sized unit equipped with Nodong-1 medium-range ballistic missiles, according to the Center for Strategic International Studies. Anything fired from it in an easterly direction would have to cross the Korean peninsula before reaching the sea. A U.S. House of Representatives panel has approved a measure to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for not releasing an unredacted copy of the report on the Russian meddling in the election. Mueller's report did not conclude that there was a criminal conspiracy between Moscow and the Trump campaign to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. However, Mr. Robert Mueller did detail 10 instances where President Trump possibly attempted to impede the investigation.
Today, we consider a report recommending that the House of Representatives hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for defying a valid subpoena issued by this committee. This is not a step we take lightly. It is the culmination of nearly 3 months of requests, discussions, and negotiations with the Department of Justice for the complete unredacted report by Special Counsel Mueller. The President has stated that his administration will oppose all subpoenas, and in fact, virtually all document requests are going unsatisfied. Witnesses are refusing to show up at hearings. This is unprecedented. If allowed to go unchecked, this obstruction means the end of congressional oversight. As a co-equal branch of government, we should not and cannot allow this to continue, or we will not be a co-equal branch of government.
Hours before the vote, Republican President Donald Trump invoked executive privilege to block the release of the unredacted version of the Mueller report. Federal courts have recognized a limited right by presidents to keep executive branch materials confidential. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said the privilege claim was in response to Nadler's blatant abuse of power and at the Attorney General's request.
Well, that's because Chairman Nadler is again trying to violate the law. The President and the Attorney General are the ones that are actually upholding it. And as long as Congress and this committee continue to ask the Attorney General to commit a crime, the President and the Attorney General will continue to actually uphold the law. I make of that people don't understand the precedent that has been set. This is fully consistent with that precedent, and it's fully consistent with the President actually upholding the law. If anybody is overstepping, that would be Chairman Nadler and his committee.
They told everyone there'd been
Now, Wednesday's developments come as a battle between House Democrats and the Trump administration intensifies. Take a listen.
Clear. Case closed. They told everyone there'd been a conspiracy between Russia and the Trump campaign. Yet on this central question, the special counsel's finding is clear. Case closed. Case closed.
So while my friend, the majority leader, wants to say case closed, I don't blame him. 375 former federal prosecutors looked at the Mueller report and said publicly that the conduct of the president amounts to felony obstruction of justice, and that in any other case, were he not president, those prosecutors would recommend bringing charges. If Russia interferes in 2020, it's not done. If this president or future presidents believe that they can avoid the law and even break the law, at least according to 375 prosecutors, it is not done. This is very serious stuff.
The redacted version of the Mueller report did not establish that the Trump campaign conspired with Russian operatives. The investigation did, however, examine multiple acts by the president that were capable of exerting undue influence over law enforcement investigations. Mueller did not conclude that Trump committed obstruction of justice, but did not exonerate him either. Now, Barr and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein subsequently concluded that President Trump did not break the law. In a separate development, the Russia probe plunged Washington into more turmoil as Donald Trump's son reportedly was ordered to testify before a Senate panel. Following a day of drama that included Trump asserting executive privilege for the first time in his presidency, the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee took the surprise step of issuing a subpoena to Donald Trump Jr. to testify as part of its investigation into Russian election interference. Trump Jr., 41, has testified voluntarily in private once to the committee and was peppered with questions about a June 9, 2016 meeting at Trump Tower in New York that he and other campaign officials had with a Russian lawyer who had offered them dirt on Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Citing a person close to Trump Jr., the Wall Street Journal reported he had offered to answer questions in writing from the committee and planned to fight the subpoena, which demands he testify in person. In other news, China rejected U.S. accusations of backtracking in trade talks and warned it would not capitulate to any pressure as the two sides head into make or break negotiations on Thursday, U.S. time. Now, after months of talks, Chinese trade envoy Liu He returns to the bargaining table in the U.S. Capitol under a tense atmosphere after U.S. negotiators accused Beijing of reneging on previously agreed commitments. The United States has raised the stakes with plans to increase tariffs on $200 billion in Chinese goods from 10 to 25% on Friday, prompting Beijing to vow to hit back with necessary countermeasures.
美方也贴了不少标签，倒退、废弃等等，中方也废承诺很多。中方重信用、守承诺，这一点从来没有改变过。
Now, Gao also said China will not capitulate to any pressure and we have the determination and ability to defend our own interests. President Donald Trump tweeted Wednesday that Liu still wanted to make a deal, but the U.S. leader boasted about tariffs that were not good for China. The sudden rupture has roiled global stock markets this week and unnerved exporters caught off guard after negotiators on both sides had previously touted progress in the negotiations. Markets in Europe and Asia sank again on Thursday. The world's two largest economies have been embroiled in a tit-for-tat tariff war since July 2018 over the U.S. demands that the Asian powerhouse adopt policy changes that would, among other things, better protect American intellectual property and make China's market more accessible to U.S. companies. A top Chinese telecom executive whose arrest in Canada on a U.S. warrant triggered a bitter diplomatic row vowed to vigorously fight extradition to the U.S. Mang Wanzhou, 47, who faces charges related to Iran sanctions violations, was appearing at a Vancouver courthouse to set a timetable for her upcoming extradition hearing. Mang's appearance was initially intended to be brief, but the defense spent several hours reprising their objections to her December arrest in Vancouver. The U.S. wants the tech executive extradited to stand trial on charges including fraud linked to the alleged violation of sanctions on Iran. Mang appeared on Wednesday in a Canadian court for a pre-extradition hearing, during which her lawyers argued that the case against her is flawed.
It was revealed that the actions directed in part by the FBI led to serious and repeated violations of Ms. Meng's rights under the Charter. The arrest of Ms. Meng at the Vancouver International Airport on December 1st, 2018 was a coordinated effort between three departments: the FBI, the RCMP, and the CBSA. The RCMP intentionally delayed the presentation of the arrest warrant in order to carry out the unlawful detention and search against Ms. Meng. More key evidence regarding this case remains in the hands of the RCMP and the CBSA. Ms. Meng will apply to the court asking to disclose more evidence on this matter. It was revealed that the arrest of Ms. Meng violated a core principle of the Canada-U.S. extradition treaty and Canadian extradition law. The U.S. allegations against Ms. Meng are based on violations of U.S. sanctions against Iran. However, Canada does not impose sanctions on financial services in relation to Iran. Because of this, the allegation she faces is not a crime in Canada, and therefore the extradition request does not satisfy the double criminality requirement. Law enforcement officials are expected to follow the rule at all times, in all cases and for all people, citizens and visitors alike. We have trust in the Canadian legal process, and we look forward to seeing Ms. Meng's freedom restored.
Now, Washington wants to put Meng on trial on fraud charges for allegedly violating Iran sanctions and lying about it to U.S. banks, but the case has become a major irritant also for Ottawa. Following her arrest, China detained former Canadian diplomat Michael Kovrig and Canadian businessman Michael Spavor in what observers saw as retaliation. China later announced it suspected Kovrig of spying and stealing state secrets and alleged Spavor had provided him with intelligence. Now, two other Canadians convicted of drug trafficking, meanwhile, were sentenced to death. And Beijing recently blocked Canadian shipments of canola and pork worth billions of dollars. Canada has accused Beijing of arbitrarily detaining both Kovrig and Spavor and called the death penalties for Canadians Fang Wei and Robert Schellenberg cruel and inhumane. Meanwhile, President Trump has twice suggested he would intervene in the U.S. Justice Department's case against Meng if it would serve national security interests or help achieve a trade deal with China. Both Huawei and Meng have denied all the charges against them. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump tightened the screws further on Iran with sanctions on its mining industry after a frustrated Tehran said it would suspend some promises it made under a nuclear deal rejected by Washington. On the anniversary of Trump's withdrawal from the accord, he denounced as horrible. Tensions were soaring as the United States deployed an aircraft carrier, strike group, and nuclear-capable bombers to the region and accused Iran of imminent attacks. In an announcement previewed for days, Iran said it would immediately stop implementing some restrictions under the 2015 deal, a move aimed largely at pressing Washington's European allies to step up to preserve the agreement. Tehran said it would abandon even more if the remaining parties to the agreement, Britain, China, France, Germany, and Russia, failed to start delivering on their commitments to sanctions relief within 60 days. The new sanctions will surely raise tensions between the two countries, but Trump says he looks forward to meeting with Iran's leader someday to work out an agreement. Meanwhile, European powers rejected ultimatums from Tehran, but vowed to fight to save the Iran nuclear deal as tensions with the U.S. soar. Iran said it would defy some restrictions agreed under the 2015 accord and threatened to go further if Europe, China, and Russia failed to deliver sanctions relief within 60 days. EU diplomatic chief Federica Mogherini and France, Germany, and Britain, the three European signatories to the deal, voiced great concern at President Hassan Rouhani's dramatic intervention. Iran also threatened to step up uranium enrichment if it wasn't shielded from from the sanctions' effects. Under the nuclear deal, which is known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, Iran agreed to limit its sensitive nuclear activities in return for sanctions relief.
Iran's decision to depart from the JCPOA for us mostly is about their decision to work on their nuclear program, to create pathways which might reduce their breakout time. These are the things that are essential for us to continue to work and to observe, and I am confident that as we watch Iran's activity, that the United Kingdom and our European partners will move forward together to ensure that Iran has no pathway for a nuclear weapons system.
And they need to be very clear that if they don't comply with the JCPOA, there will be consequences. And I'm sure that I'm speaking for my European colleagues in that respect as well. This is a very big moment for Iran. Their economy is in a state of severe distress. It's the last thing they should be doing for the Iranian people, to be investing money in renuclearizing, and it will make them less secure, not more secure.
Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called on signatories to abide by the Iran nuclear deal. Lavrov said the 2015 deal had been fragile since U.S. President Donald Trump announced Washington would pull out a year ago.
СВПД – это очень сложная конструкция. Она создавалась не один месяц, даже, по-моему, больше года. И в ней все предельно сбалансировано в этой конструкции. Поэтому, когда американцы вышли из этой договоренности, она стала весьма и весьма хрупкой. К сожалению, пока некоторые наши европейские коллеги пытаются в разговорах о ситуации вокруг Ирана выдвигать идеи, которые не имеют ничего общего с совместным всеобъемлющим планом действий и которые напоминают попытку отвлечь внимание от неспособности наших европейских партнеров полностью выполнять совместный всеобъемлющий план действий.
Now, the Iran nuclear agreement. Now, as we said, Iran said it had stopped respecting limits on its nuclear activities agreed under the deal with major powers until they find a way to bypass renewed U.S. sanctions, as Washington accused Tehran of resorting to blackmail. And here's the background of the Iran nuclear deal. Take a look.
On the 14th of July 2015, the United States, Britain, China, France, Germany, Russia and Iran reached a long-term agreement to restrict Iran's nuclear program. Uranium found in nature is made up of two isotopes or chemical elements. 99.3% is uranium-238 and less than 1% uranium-235, used to produce nuclear energy. To increase the percentage of uranium-235, centrifuges are used in a process known as enrichment. Many centrifuges are needed to obtain a significant amount of usable uranium. To generate power, U-235 must be enriched by 3.5 to 5%. Uranium enriched to 90%, however, can be used to make a nuclear weapon. Under the terms of the deal, Tehran will halt construction of enrichment facilities for 15 years. It will limit uranium enrichment to 3.67% during that time frame and reduce the number of uranium centrifuges by around 2/3. Only 5,060 of those centrifuges remaining will be used for enrichment for a period of 10 years. Fordo nuclear facility will be used for research, Natanz will become Iran's only enrichment site, and the Arak heavy water reactor will be redesigned to prevent production of weapons-grade plutonium.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned. Now, South Africa headed to the polls in a general election last Wednesday. The party of Nelson Mandela, the African National Congress, or ANC, has dominated the political life of this nation for the past 25 years, with voters repeatedly backing the organization that ended the apartheid regime. Now, many now in South Africa will be doing the unthinkable, and they will be voting for a change. Here's a report from Priscilla Chulu.
It's the day South Africans have been waiting for. For more than 2 decades, the African National Congress, or ANC, has been the ruling party of the country. But over the past few years, many have been calling for a change. South Africans are ready to vote. And here in the Free State, there are plenty of parties to choose from. In recent years, the Democratic Alliance, or DA, has become a major challenger in key areas across the nation, while the Economic Freedom Fighters, or EFF, has made arguably the most noise on the political and international stage, with its generous promises and extreme calls for change, like taking back farmland without compensating the current owners. The DA and the EFF have pounced on the ANC's recent disappointments and failures.
You know what, we are hoping for the best, you know what I'm saying, because it's been some times now, looking for some changes, you know what I'm saying. I hope these elections bring changes that we've been waiting for so long, you know what I mean. We know that there have been some changes, but, you know what I mean, there's not enough changes, but hopefully this time, because this is a new dawn, you know what I mean, we are hoping for bigger change than what we have seen before. That's basically what we are looking for this election. Hopefully, political parties will deliver that. It's an open secret now, you know what I mean. ANC has done so much, you know what I'm saying. But you see, as we all know, that it's never enough, you know what I'm saying. I think during the course of the time, you know, ANC will deliver massively. But hopefully this time, we will see the changes. I'm a staunch member of African National Congress, member of in good standing, and today I'm going to cast my vote in ANC because this is ANC government. I want to do anything. I'm going to cast my vote ANC. I want change party. ANC is my party. ANC today, ANC tomorrow, ANC forever.
These elections, I hope for some other people to have their home. There are so many people who doesn't have their home. They don't have. We don't work, and other people are there. The children, they are not working. They go to school, but when supposed to work, there's nothing. So I think maybe this time they will hear our voices. I still do. I still have them that faith in them, but I hope they don't disappoint us. As you can look at the street now, there's no pavement, there's no craft, there's no home. There are other people there. They don't have home. You can't live in a shack for your whole life. They have to have a better home where they can always be safe. That side is not safe. Even at night, they are not safe at all.
Though the ANC has been racked with accusations of corruption, headlining scandals of former President Jacob Zuma, and on many times has failed to deliver services to citizens, many South Africans remain loyal to the party they marched with to freedom.
Do you think the ANC will hold on to their power after this election?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they already made it. Yeah. I think they can make it still, yes. Yeah.
I'm looking for, after the voting, we should have better things. We are expecting better things from any party that will win.
What party are you hoping to win?
I can't say, but I'm hoping ANC should win. Yeah.
So you're still a staunch ANC supporter?
Yes, I am still and will forever be.
Why forever?
Because that's been the party I've been voting for, even if we know that sometimes they don't do things right, but we still have hope for them to do right things.
Do you think they'll be able to hold on to their power after this election?
I'm not sure, but I'm hoping so.
Some regional results may be available as soon as Thursday afternoon, but traditionally, official results are announced on the Saturday following the election. So this Saturday, May 11th, the winners will emerge, and for many, so will the fate of the nation. Reporting from South Africa, I'm Priscilla Chulu for Eagle News, and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Priscilla. Over 52 million people are undernourished in the Near East and North Africa region, and the numbers are continuing to rise. A UN report said on Wednesday. The Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, says that conflicts and protracted crises have spread and worsened since 2011, and the UN's chances of bringing about zero hunger by 2030 are looking increasingly slim. Conflict is the main driver for hunger in the region. Around 34 million affected people live in countries affected by conflict. These included Iraq, Libya, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, whose ongoing four-year war has killed tens of thousands of people, including many civilians, according to humanitarian organizations. The fighting in Yemen has triggered what the United Nations describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with 3.3 million people still displaced and 24.1 million in need of aid. Beyond conflicts, other challenges include high unemployment and a big gap in living standards and poverty rates between rural areas, where the majority of the poor are living, and urban centers. In other news, Venezuelan intelligence agents arrested on Wednesday a senior leader of the opposition-dominated National Assembly in the latest action against lawmakers who joined a failed uprising against President Nicolas Maduro last month. Edgar Zambrano was towed in his car to the notorious political prison El Helicoide after he refused to leave his vehicle when he was approached by agents from the SEBIN intelligence agency. It was the first arrest of an opposition figure since the botched revolt. Zambrano is deputy to National Assembly Speaker Juan Guaido, who is recognized as the country's leader by more than 50 states and who organized the April 30 revolt. The United States and several Latin American states criticized Zambrano's arrest. On the Twitter account of its now closed embassy in Caracas, Washington called the detention illegal and inexcusable. It warned of consequences if he's not immediately released. Early Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump, whose country was among the first to back Guaido, said he was discussing the terrible abuses by Maduro. Trump didn't mention Zambrano, but said the U.S. will stand with the people of Venezuela for however long it takes. Along with the U.S., Argentina, Colombia, Chile, and Peru protested his arrest. We warn the people of Venezuela and the international community the regime has kidnapped the first vice president of the National Assembly, said Guaido, who heads the body and has been in a power struggle with Maduro since declaring himself acting president in January. They're trying to destroy the power representing all Venezuelans, but they will not achieve it, Guaido said. Now, Guaido insisted his movement would not be cowed and that Maduro's time in power was running out. He said the dictatorship will not mask its internal split with these measures, nor will it stop the inevitable. In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin vows to ensure Russia's military capabilities as the country marks World War II Victory Day, a commemoration that has become increasingly important over his two-decade rule. The president's speech to thousands of soldiers and veterans on Red Square came at the start of an annual parade that sees hundreds of pieces of military hardware roll through the streets of Moscow. Take a look.
Уважаемые товарищи, уроки прошедшей войны по-прежнему актуальны. Мы делали и будем делать все необходимое, чтобы обеспечить высокую боеспособность наших вооруженных сил.
Задают темп и ритм движения парадных расчетов. Возглавляет парадный расчет, с гордостью называя себя «Я суворовец».
The event, held every year on May 9, is an annual fixture designed to commemorate the Soviet Union's victory over the Nazis in the Second World War. On this occasion, the country showcased its modernized war hardware in a traditional grand parade on Moscow's Red Square. Parades and celebrations also took place in towns and cities across the country, from the European exclave of Kaliningrad to the far eastern Sakhalin Island near Japan. However, a flyby planned for the capital was canceled because of poor weather, according to news agencies. State television broadcast marches from around the former USSR, including from the unrecognized Republic of Lugansk, a Ukrainian breakaway region.
Свыше 600 генералов, более 100 выпускников училища и воинских частей российской армии. 4. Под командованием старшего лейтенанта Сергея Громова.
In other news, Britain's Prince Harry and wife Meghan announced their new dream son's name is Archie, hours after showing him off to the world for the first time. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are pleased to announce they have named their firstborn child, Archie Harrison, Mountbatten Windsor. The couple announced on their Instagram account, ending months of speculation. The informal choice defied the bookmakers' predictions and confirmed the couple's determination not to be bound by tradition. Archie's proud parents emerged in front of the cameras inside Windsor Castle earlier Wednesday to show off their son ahead of introducing him to great-grandmother Queen Elizabeth II.
It's magic. It's pretty amazing, and I mean, I have the two best guys in the world, so I'm really happy.
We're just so thrilled to have our own little bundle of joy, to be able to spend some precious times with him as he slowly starts to grow up. Another great grandchild.
Royal watchers had been desperate for a glimpse of the new baby, who is 7th in the line to the British throne ever since the couple announced his birth to their 6.5 million followers on Instagram with the message, "It's a boy."
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Obviously thrilled, absolutely thrilled, and looking forward to seeing them in the next few days when he's quite down. I'm very pleased and glad to welcome my brother to the Sleep Deprivation Society that is parenting, so yeah, that will be...
Former U.S. TV star Meghan has created a fresh buzz around the century-old House of Windsor. Meghan has also made waves with her modernizing ways. She also ignored tradition by keeping the birth and recovery process private. The couple have also chosen not to use courtesy titles at present, although he could become a prince when his grandfather, the Prince of Wales, becomes king. The inspiration behind the name is now likely to be the main source of speculation. The name has traditionally been used as a shortened version of the Old English and Scottish name Archibald, meaning truly brave. UK royal names are normally chosen from a relatively restricted pool of those used by past kings and queens. But Meghan and Harry are anything but normal royals, and reports had emerged that the couple were considering an unusual name that was relevant to both Britain and the US. And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Health is our most important asset.
More displacement of overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, and other foreign workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia looms as the Saudi government intensifies the nationalization of its workforce. In a new statement, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, said the Saudi government announced it would stop the renewal of residency permits for foreigners in 35 professions. The new Saudi policy will also lead to the termination of employment and deportation of foreigners aged between 35 to 54 in the said categories. The move will give opportunity for young Saudi graduates to work in the kingdom and end the prevailing unemployment crisis, POEA said. The new Saudi policy will cover the following professions: purchasing officer, dealer of auto shows, information recorder, central commissar, housing supervisor, secretary, customer accountant, debt collector, written functions, tour guide, pharmacist, assistant pharmacist, medical secretary, financial references, administrative clerk, and relationship jobs. The other affected occupations are storekeeper, prospecting, support staff, human resources officer, personal manager, receptionists, employees in employees units, treasurer, references to government departments, security guard, administrative manager, librarian, training manager, purchasing manager, bookseller, mail dispenser, and administrative assistant. The new policy is an offshoot of the Saudi government's measure last year to restrict 12 retail store categories to Saudi nationals. The Saudi government has been trying to limit its dependence to foreign workers since 2017, when it started taxing dependents of expatriates staying in Saudi. The initial amount of the tax is 100 Saudi Arabian rial. It will increase to 300 rials by July 2019. Last year, it also started imposing a $400 or a 400 rial monthly tax for every expat worker from companies which have foreign workers outnumbering its local employees. Meanwhile, world stock markets sank again Thursday on heightened China-U.S. tensions before make-or-break trade talks in Washington, according to dealers. The dollar and oil prices steady. The two-day gathering has taken on huge significance after U.S. President Trump threatened to more than double punitive tariffs on $200 billion of imports Friday, arguing that Beijing broke their previously agreed commitments on trade. Chinese trade envoy Liu He returns to the bargaining table in the U.S. Capitol later Thursday under a tense atmosphere with far-ranging ramifications for the world's two biggest economies. Beijing has rejected U.S. accusations of backtracking and warned it would not capitulate to any pressure as the pair enter into eagerly awaited negotiations. In midday deals, London's benchmark FTSE 100 index of major blue-chip companies was down 0.3%. Frankfurt's DAX 30 slid 0.7%, while the Paris CAC 40 shed 1.1%, with sentiment hit also by disappointing earnings for ArcelorMittal. Shares in the world's largest steel firm tanked 5.36% to 16.82 euros after it revealed that first quarter net profits plunged on sliding steel prices. In Asia, meanwhile, Hong Kong stocks were hammered more than 2%, while Shanghai ended 1.5% lower and Tokyo sank 0.9%. Emirates Airlines reported a 69% drop in net profits on high fuel prices and a strong dollar in what it described as a tough year. The Dubai carrier posted $237 million in net profits for the financial year, ending in March compared to $765 million in the previous year, according to a statement. 2018 to 2019 has been tough, and our performance was not as strong as we would have liked, according to the chairman and chief executive of Emirates Group, Sheikh Ahmed bin Safid Al Maktoum, in a statement. Higher oil prices and the strengthened U.S. dollar eroded our earnings, even as competition intensified in our key markets, he said. The airline said that the strengthening of the U.S. dollar against most of U.S. currencies of its key markets eroded $156 million from profits. Its fuel bill increased by 25% to $8.4 billion, its biggest ever. And Google holds its annual developer conference where executives dive deep into ways the American tech giant is improving its software, particularly with privacy in mind. Take a look.
Data helps make search work better for you. And with auto delete, you can choose how long you want it to be saved. For example, 3 or 18 months. After which any old data will be automatically and continuously deleted from your account. Incognito mode has been a popular feature in Chrome since it launched, and we are bringing this to Maps. While in Incognito in Maps, your activity, like the places you search and navigate to, won't be linked to your account.
Hub Max is a Google Assistant smart display that's also a smart home controller, a TV for your kitchen, a great digital photo frame, an indoor camera, and it's perfect for video calling.
It seems to me that we are at a point where for Google kind of moving away from being associated with Facebook is an important task. Putting the consumers in control is easing the eyes of the government and regulation in general.
And Eagle News International will return after this short break. Stay tuned. The closure of the glittering Thai Bay, made famous by the movie The Beach, has been extended for another 2 years to allow a full recovery of its corals and wildlife, drawing a sharp rebuke from the tourism industry. Maya Bay, ringed by cliffs on Phi Island and surrounded by azure waters, was made famous when it featured in the 2000 film starring Leonardo DiCaprio. It was shot last June by Thai authorities due to worries the white sand paradise was suffering from the pressure of thousands of day trippers arriving by boat. Authorities had initially said the beach, a massive draw for Thailand's more than 38 million tourists, was going to be closed for 4 months, but the reopening was repeatedly postponed. Thomrang Sanawao, advisor to the Department of National Parks, told AFP on Thursday the ban on visitors will now be extended until mid-2021. In the heart of Iceland's volcano country, 21st century alchemists are transforming carbon dioxide into rock for eternity, cleaning the air of harmful emissions that cause global warming. Take a look.
We capture the CO2 actually in a very simple process by dissolving it in water. So basically we're just making soda water out of the CO2. Then we transport that water containing the dissolved CO2 towards our injection field, where we inject it into the subsurface, and there it's turned into rock through mineralization reactions with the surrounding bedrock.
All right, and that's all the time we have for you tonight. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.